As a world-class technology company, Chromalloy is committed to delivering safe, reliable, and cost-effective solutions and services for aerospace engines and industrial gas turbines. With our long legacy of innovation and expertise, we are trusted by some of the world's...
Please welcome back to the stage today's MC, Senator Brenda Stanley.
Welcome back, everyone. We have a great afternoon of presentations planned for you. The tables are all open seating, so you can move down to them and be up front. Let's get started with meeting a premier sponsor, Ms. Laura Fawcett, Governance, Risk, and Compliance Consultant with Guernsey. Please help me welcome Laura Fawcett.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry, I'm going to try and get this exciting because I know we're all kind of in that tired right after lunch lull. So we're going to try and keep this exciting. As I said, I'm Laura Fawcett from Guernsey. If you're not familiar with us, we're a mission-driven design and consulting firm. We're a proud member of the DIB through a lot of things, and we're able to help tinker through supporting the DoD as well as some of the providers for utility privatization. Our group is the cybersecurity group. So our way to support the DIB is that we're the 8th C3PAO in the country, first and only in Oklahoma. And really what that means is when CMMC goes live, we can go out and assess everybody's cybersecurity compliance on behalf of the DoD. So probably some of you have heard a lot about CMMC, and you've been hearing about it for years. Thank you. And any valuable conversation on this topic is going to be way more than 10 minutes. So I'm going to try to hit a handful of high notes, and I would love for you guys to stop by and have a longer conversation with us and view our slides. I'm not even going to advance the slides. Way too much information there. So the big question is CMMC really going to happen? And absolutely it is. It's in the final stages of rulemaking right now, so about the middle to end of October, we're going to actually see what that looks like, what the rules are really going to be. So the question is, how do you prepare for that? What you've got to remember is all DoD contractors, the primes and the subs, you've got most of the requirements already in your contracts now. NIST 800-171, here's where I get a little dry and boring, is the cybersecurity framework designed to protect classified, controlled unclassified information. I've said it a million times. So really, that really sensitive information that's not classified, but that if it leaks out to our adversaries, it can really give a lot of information about the DoD and about our supply chain. So our goal here is really to protect the supply chain and the cybersecurity of those companies. So what's in those contracts now? Like I said, that requirement is there. What you have to do is right now self-assess, tell the DoD how you're doing, and anywhere you're not meeting the requirements, what your timeline is and what your plan is to meet those objectives. So that's what you've already got to do right now, and that's the exact path you need to be on to be ready for CMMC when it goes live. There's a lot of different pieces and companies and solutions out there that are, hey, here's a quick fix, or hey, here's what you can do to easily be CMMC compliant. And a lot of those solutions are a piece of the puzzle, but they're not really going to be the whole thing. What's most important is knowing where that information is in your systems, who in your company is using it, and who you're sharing it with, be it your subcontractors, your partners, your suppliers, and making sure that they're protecting it just like you're protecting that information. There are some ways to evaluate and see if you're ready. Companies like Guernsey, C3PAOs, can come in and assess you against 800-171 today and say, you know, your score, how accurate is that score? Are you doing a good job meeting all these requirements? And that'll give you a really great indication of how much work you still need to do when CMMC comes along. So with all that said, there's still a lot of moving parts, right? CMC, we're waiting to see what it finally looks like. And those of us that are kind of living and breathing this right now, we did get a little sneak peek. As it's going through final rulemaking and we're all anxiously looking at the Federal Register, waiting to see it go live, a few of the supporting documents got put out there accidentally. Luckily, we got to see those for the few hours they were out there. And so what that gave us was a glimpse to help give people additional guidance on what this is really going to look like. So we now know for a fact that there will be 3 levels, level 1, level 2, and level 3. What was a little different from previous versions is that level 2 and level 1 will be separate and unique assessments. Because at level 1, even though the rules may be the same, the criteria for assessing them is going to be a little different. So to be a level 2 certified organization, which most companies will be, you'll have to have those criteria assessed and your level 1 as well. The other interesting thing we saw about level 2 is some of those, the parts of your environment that are protecting this information. So think your multi-factor authentication, your firewalls, things like that. In the previous version, it said, you know, of these 110 cybersecurity requirements you've got to follow, you really only have to assess those things against a handful that are applicable. From what we've seen in the new documentation, you're going to have to assess those assets against all 110 requirements. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of plays out as we see the rest of the rule and all the details. The other thing we got to see for the first time was what the requirements are for level 3. So not only here's the cybersecurity requirements you've got to meet, but how do you really determine how many assets in your environment have to be looked at, and what are you really assessing? At level 2, it's just those assets that are handling the CUI, where you're interacting with it and where you're storing it. At level 3, it looks like what they're going to expect is that anything that could possibly have it, so think somebody accidentally emails it to you, or you accidentally print it on a printer you're not supposed to, those assets now come into scope. So that's going to be a really big difference to go to level 3. A lot more of your environment and your IT systems are really going to have to be looked at and make sure it's up to muster. The big open question there that we didn't get any indication of is who really needs to be level 3, and that's what we're really most excited to see about. Again, we'll see that in about October. You guys all know the rulemaking process is kind of long, so we expect this stuff to be official probably January of 2025. The other moving part in this whole system is that NIST 800-171, that framework that everything's based on, it's also going through an update. So earlier this year, NIST put out an update to that. It's got quite a few changes in it, a lot of them good, to be honest, the things we were happy to see from just good security. But the high points of those I'd like to call out, and again, reiterating, it's still in draft form, so it could change. But they added supply chain requirements, which, all week we've been talking, or all week, all day at the conference, we've been talking about supply chain and how critical that is to the DoD. So not only is the DoD assessing, those contractors' supply chain, but they want to make sure that you, as a contractor, are assessing your supply chain, not only your subcontractors, but also your IT vendors, really anybody that affects the security of your environment. They're expecting to see more documentation, which is always a good thing. That's the best way to demonstrate that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the last piece that's interesting is they've added a requirement, whether it stays, we'll see, that anybody that's required to comply with 800-171 has to have an independent assessment. So I think that in a way emboldens the CMMC program, because NIST is also saying, hey, you need someone independent from your organization, making sure you're really doing what you need to be doing. So with all this, kind of what's our advice? So our advice is make sure you're buttoned up and you're doing what you're required to do now. Checking that you're meeting those 800-171 requirements. If you're not meeting them, that you've got a really detailed plan and timeline to make that happen. Then when CMMC rule finally goes live, then you just really assess the difference. Hey, where does this not match up? What are the extra things I need to do? And just kind of keep those additional requirements in mind, because any good cybersecurity framework, as we all know, it's going to continue to change and evolve over time as our cybersecurity risks changed. With that said, I know 10 minutes is really quick. Anybody have any questions or something that I didn't hit on that you'd love to hear about? Yes, ma'am. That is the million-dollar question, right? I mean, there's tons of factors. It's, how big your organization is, how complex your environment is, lots of things like that. And the Small Business Association, I will say, has been talking to the DoD a lot about that. So the assessments themselves, if you're required to have one, and that's one thing I didn't touch on, is at that level 2, there's gonna be some kind of criteria for if you can still self-assess, or if you've got to go have a third party do the assessment. Right now, because the market's pretty small, the assessment part is about 40 to 50,000 is what we're seeing in the market. But again, nobody can really officially do one. So we expect as it goes live and more assessing organizations come into the ecosystem, that those prices will go down. Yes? That is another piece I missed, so I thank you very much for that question. Yes, to become a C3PAO, we were assessed by the DoD, their DIBCAC, which is their assessment organization. They assessed us to make sure we were compliant first, yes. So all of those have been assessed.
What about sub-tier supplier flow down? Is it all sub-tier suppliers, or is it only those that receive CUI from you?
It should be those that receive CUI or could. So you want to obviously be careful with that, handling that in flow downs. That I don't know. That's a question, and I can go back and get the answer. So the Cyber AB is the organization that kind of manages us as assessors. I know I'm over time. So I'll take that back to them and see what their plan is for that.
We're a trustworthy supplier, but there's a lot of suppliers that are not.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely a competitive advantage, no doubt. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time, and we'd love for you to come by our booth and talk in a little more detail.
Big thank you to Laura. She did a great job. And now we're going to welcome to our stage Breaking Barriers panel. First, Colonel Rodney Lambert, Air Force Sustainment Center Contracting Directorate. Mr. Ronnie Hobbs, Director, Air Force Sustainment Center, Small Business Office. Ms. Connie Bertolucci, Vice President of WB Industries. And our moderator, Mr. Steve Gray, Director of the 448th Supply Chain Management Wing. Please welcome all of them.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
How you doing? Hi, everyone. All right, excellent. We don't have to introduce our panel, but I would like to take a moment to have these experts and professionals describe what they do, what their role is, and then hopefully remove some of the confusion about, okay, what's the difference between contracting and small business? What is all that? So Colonel Lambert, please.
Yes, sir, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Good, thank you. I'm the acting director of Air Force Sustainment Contracting, so we're the pinnacle of all 3 operating locations, whether it's Tinker, Robbins, or Hill. So we do all the policy and guidance across all 3 locations. At its most basic, what contracting does is whatever the Air Force can't do itself organically, we contract for. So we follow all of the procedures and everybody's favorite regulations to get us all on contract. We'd like to be faster, so we're working on that. So looking forward to this panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Colonel Lambert. Ronnie?
So good afternoon. My name is Ronnie Hobbs. I'm a Director of Small Business for the Air Force Sustainment Center. Again, just like Colonel Lambert, we have operating locations at Tinker, Robbins, and Hill. We have a pretty simple vision. We're trying to connect your capability in industry to the requirements we have within AFSC. And we do that through events like this, through outreach events. We do outreach with other industry organizations such as Chamber of Commerce. We also have a responsibility to do in-reach to the acquisition workforce, training them on market research principles, how to utilize the small business programs that are available that are available to them. We also really assist the acquisition team with the source selections with the evaluation of the small business valuation factor. So contracting and small business works hand in hand on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie. Connie, tell us a little bit about your role as a vice president in WB Industries and how that kind of rolls into our panel today.
Sure, thank you. My name is Connie Bertolucci. I am one of the owners of WB Industries. We are a small business, design, build to print manufacturing company. So we usually don't manufacture anything until our customer asks us to either design it or build it to their print.
Excellent, thank you. So great, last year we spent a lot of time at this event talking about barriers and how to break through that. And I'm standing in for Mr. Denny D'Angelo as the moderator here, but he took that home back to the Sustainment Center and quite frankly challenged Ronnie and a number of us to look at that and look at it very closely and try to find ways to break barriers for small businesses and to come in, make it easier to come into the Sustainment Center and the Air Force at large to do business. So one of our first panel questions for Ronnie is going to be, could you talk about the work that we did this past year on source approvals, engaging industry, defining requirements, and other areas to help break down barriers for entry for our small businesses?
So thank you for that question, Mr. Gray. First off, before we talk about the barriers, I do want to talk about the positive. And I'd really want to thank the small business professionals that we have in the audience that work in my office, the acquisition professionals, as well as the small businesses that are in attendance. This year, we're actually on pace to award over $1.4 billion to small business for FY23.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And for us, that's a record that I can find going back to at least 2015, so we're very proud of that. So this time last year at Tinker and the Primes was my very first day in the small business office. It was this week. And I had no idea what I had signed up for. After about the second day, I remember looking at my wife and I said, I don't know what I've gotten into. Many of you that don't know me, I might act extroverted, but I'm actually a pretty big introvert. So I knew this was going to be a challenge for me. But I want to thank you in the audience, the small businesses, all the organizations that we work with, all of the small business professionals in our office for giving me the grace and helping me get up to speed in this job. It's really helped me, and I truly appreciate that. So coming down to last year, as Mr. Gray said, there were several areas that you identified in industry that you thought we could address. And he spoke about those, the SAR process, the OTA consortium that we have, the forecasting, and acquisition flexibilities that you thought we could implement. So the SAR process is a 3-letter word. I think many of you in the audience would consider it a 4-letter word. We realize it's a very tough process to address. And we're not up here saying today that we've solved all the problems, but what we are saying is that we are committed to trying to address those. We've been working very hard over the past year to do that. And one of the big things we're trying to do is simplify the submittal process. So when the team looked at it, one of the biggest things we found is that one of the biggest confusions is the multiple points of entry across the operating locations. If you're submitting at Hill, Robbins, or Tinker, you got to determine who's the PCO, where is it going. So we tried to simplify that, and no matter if you're submitting to Air Force SAR at any operating location, it should now go to the small business office. So the next thing we're doing is trying to provide increased transparency for industry once you do submit your SAR. We're working with our LCMC partners and all the Supply Chain Management Group organization to try to standardize one system. Currently, we have multiple systems of how we track internally, so we're working to try to standardize that into one. It's called the industrial engineering system that we utilize. We think that will provide a very good baseline to see where all the SARs are at, where they're being processed, and to help give you more visibility into that process. Another thing, our defense industrial base, you guys support both Air Force and DLA contracts. And you are constantly having to switch back and forth between DLA or Air Force templates, and we know that is frustrating. So last week, we actually had our first engagement with DLA at a very high level to see, can we create one process for industry that they can submit to where they don't have to worry about, is it Air Force, is it DLA, is it supply chain? So we think that'll have great dividends for you guys in industry. So the next was the OTA consortium, and this was a very hot topic. The consortium was a fairly new development over the past several years, and the frustration that we got back from industry is that we were not using the consortium to the level you anticipated. But when we looked at the why, there was really not a problem with the consortium. It really boiled down to what we felt was internal training to our workforce. So Mr. Gray's SASPO team created a very robust roadshow that showed all the internal tools that were available to the engineers. And they have actually given that roadshow, so every engineer within the workforce has seen that, and they know how to use the OTA as well as the other tools available, and we think that would drive increased adoption and usage of the OTA. The next is the forecasting. Industry explained that you needed to know what was coming so you could align your resources to our needs. The team, this is a tough one, I'm not gonna lie to you. So the team has really addressed this through multiple avenues. First, we kind of focused on who we were closest with, which is supply chain management wing. They already have something called the requirements projections on the web. However, industry said, hey, you kind of had some frustrations with that. You felt like it was still data, you didn't know if you trusted it. So we said, okay. So we went out and surveyed you and said, what data elements do you need to see to allow you to make better business decisions? So we took that feedback back and we added those data elements that we could add to the RPAL. So when we put that RPAL out, well, I'll tell you what we added to it first. So we added, is it funded? Is it a funded PR or a planning PR? Is it sole source or competitive? Is it on a long-term contract? Is it DLA? Is it Air Force? And several other items which we think will help you understand the requirement and make a better business case. So next, moving forward, we're going to continue. This is going to be not a one-time process, but we're going to continue to survey industry, and we ask for your feedback. When we put it out next time, if you feel like it doesn't help you make a business decision, tell us what you need to see to help drive that, and we will do everything we can to add that information to the enhanced HARPAL. So the next thing is not just supply chain, but the air-based wing and complex requirements. They have a lot of requirements as well, which is where a lot of our small business work is at. This is an increased challenge because it's in a constantly evolving in the requirements and the funding streams, and trying to forecast that is very difficult. However, we're working with our PZI counterparts to try to determine what information we can release to industry, and we're trying to get at least a 12 to 24-month forecast to you. The first thing we're doing, though, is we're gathering all the strategic vehicles, and we're consolidating that into one list and putting that out to industry within the next 2 weeks. And we think that will at least show you where we're buying 80% of our stuff. That'll give you some idea of, okay, is there an on-ramp to that contract? Especially if you're looking at how we buy paint or how we buy paving, you'll be able to see on-ramps that you potentially can get on in the future. So finally, and what I think is the most exciting, is the acquisition flexibility initiative. So the team saw new ways, innovative ways to try to expand the industrial base for Mr. Gray and for the Air Force, as well as ensuring risk mitigation for Air Force readiness. So we all know the government's requirement system is based on production lead times. So if you got a first article or IPE required, then the supply chain can be at risk. So we came up with 2 ways to mitigate this, and we call them the industrial mobilization and the delivery protection program. So with the industrial mobilization, it allows the government to award small quantity contracts to the security industrial base in case of future emergencies. And we're really using that to target new approved contractors that had recently been approved that would need to accomplish a first article or an IPE. And the goal is that we'll award the first article or IPE in a small production quantity to ensure successful transition to production. So for the government, what does it do for us? It mitigates the risk, and it's only a small portion of the government requirement.
You're back.
I'm back. Kinda, I think. Am I back? Okay, so for contractors, the goal for this is it mitigates the cost of becoming an approved source, and it provides an avenue to complete the first article or IPE without the pressure of putting the government supply system at risk. So the next thing to kind of build upon that is a delivery protection program, and for you that have been around this for 20, 25 years, it's really commonly referred to as an insurance buy. We just kind of rebranded it. We had lost the recipe, and we're kind of coming back to that. So with the delivery protection program, it's another method to mitigate our risk when we have to do a first article or IPE. And it provides a structure for us to have one RFP, and we can award 2 contracts. We'll award 1 contract for a contractor that requires the first article, and 1 for a contractor that can begin production immediately. So the first article or IPE contract is structured to award the production quantity upon successful completion of the first article, and the second contract includes option quantities for production in case the first article is delayed or is unsuccessful. For the government, this will help ensure we can continue to provide supply chain support while also providing the opportunity and the incentive for our engineers to keep approving sources and expanding the industrial base. And what this really is going to do is prevent the need for urgent emergency contracts every time we have a delay or we have some issue with an IPE where we can quickly drop an order for the proven source that we already have on contract. For the contractors, what we believe for the approved but not for the approved sources but unproven, the benefit is you get the opportunity to complete the first article without that burden. And for the proven contractors, you get the benefit to compete for the government workload, utilizing the experience from your previous production of the item. So overall, these two programs provide incentive for contractors to become new approved sources to support the supply chain, and it provides opportunities for contractors to recuperate their cost for becoming an approved source. And ultimately, this will expand the industrial base. So the ultimate goal of this long term is for the government to expand the industrial base, which will in turn drive us to compete long-term contracts with multiple vendors. So we know these efforts will not solve all of our problems, but we believe these are first steps in trying to identify innovative solutions to help get after the supply chain readiness issues in the Air Force. Thank you. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie.
Can I add to that a little bit?
Absolutely.
With regard to industrial mobilization, so the Senior Procurement Executive, Honorable Hunter, has been very clear he wants to drive competition. The brief I was on a couple weeks ago, the first bullet read, compete, compete, compete. So when we say we're going to do an exception to competition with industrial mobilization, which is exactly what that is, we're going to award directly to a vendor. It's kind of at odds, right? But the whole point is we want to increase the agility and the robustness of the industrial base and create more competition. So we're going to restrict competition to build competition. And that might give a little bit of pause for some of you in that, well, if we're having to compete, is the work going to be there? How do I know that it's going to be worth the effort of going through the process of the SAR, the first article testing, and all those items? Well, phase 2 of that would be we're going to award a multiple award contract for that. So if we develop 2 or 3 more additional sources, we can put that on one large contract, so you each have a contract, and that's good for you because you'll have a minimum order guarantee, so that'll help maintain the viability of your company. It'll help maintain that warm, ready line for we need to surge as we prepare for the next upcoming conflict. It also helps me because when I first got here 2 or 3 months ago, General Hopkins was very clear that he wanted, and Mr. Gray maybe a little bit as well, he wants us to get the contract faster. So if I do multiple award contracts and I can cut orders off of that, my procurement lead time goes from 12 months, 18 months, sometimes longer, to 2 months. So, I mean, really this program, I'm excited about it, just as Mr. Hobbs is, that I really think this is going to move the needle for us, and it could be a win-win for both of us.
Thank you. Yeah, time is not our friend today, right? Yeah. So, but thanks for that, Ronnie. A lot of details there. Your feedback is super important here. We want to make sure we're on the right track and putting our calories into things that are going to help. So please grab all of us or grab one of us and give us some feedback. So Connie, if I could, I'll go to you. Throughout this conference, we've talked about how important the relationship is between industry and the government and how we want to blend that all together. I'm interested in your viewpoint on government engagement efforts and ways we can improve on that or engage industry to build that relationship and also, team a little bit better.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mr. Gray. Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate you including me on this panel.
I'm sure you do.
Great opportunity. Thank you. Yeah. So I think if you step back and look at all the resources that the government, that the Air Force, that Tinker puts towards engaging with industry and small business, it's pretty impressive. It's a lot, right? Mm-hmm. From your Apex accelerators to your small business offices to industry days to things like Tinker and the Prime. Kind of my favorite is when you get into that market research where the government's asking for specific capabilities. That's where kind of the fun starts. So as we look forward with all this amazing interaction and engagement that we're doing and that momentum, to perhaps look at how can we maybe focus more on helping industry find who are the people, what do they need, where, how, when, and matching those capabilities probably quicker to get industry and small business able to make better decisions, right? So I agree completely with what you said yesterday about that transparency of information. I think it's so important to have timely information, good information, meaningful, to help us sort of take that next step with all this engagement and really kind of making it more effective. I know it's happening because I've worked with the Sustainment Center and the Small Business Office, but maybe to sort of systematize it more so that it's more repeatable and easier. I think a lot of what you said might solve some of that. But yeah, that's where I think kind of the next phase or next evolution.
So Mr. Gray, I'll add on to that. So when General Hawkins got here and we did his first Commander Summit, that was one of the things that he challenged all of us, and specifically the Small Business Office, was create a clear, transparent process how industry, when they come in, track them through that engagement and how to get them down to the requirement owner. And that's exactly what we are doing. And actually at the conclusion of this event is going to be our first a kickoff for that effort. We're going to be working with the SASPO, the Complex Biz Development, EN, LG, Small Business Office, Contracting. We're trying to create a clear, transparent process that shows you how we operate. If we can show you how we're set up, not just an org chart, not a US map that shows where we're located, but an actual org chart that shows you how we operate and who the points of contacts are at those individual organizations. Because in my opinion, the quicker I can get you to those people, the quicker you'll have more success. So my goal, if you never talk to me again, I've done my job. I know that'll never happen though. But yes, I really believe that this will be beneficial for you, and the goal is to put it out on the AFSC website. So the goal, as soon as you go to the AFSC website, big red button, how to do business with AFSC, and whether you're academia, whether you're industry, whether you're a PEO or PSM, you know who to engage within the Air Force Sustainment Center, whether it's LG for DSORs, Complex to Business Development for public-private partnerships, or SASPO for supply chain readiness issues. I mean, we want to get you to the right people faster. So thank you.
Hey, thanks, Colonel Lambert. It's coming to you next. So we've talked industry's perspective on engagement, small business. What about contracting and things that are happening in the PK community to engage earlier in the process and open up that dialogue with industry? Can you give us a little bit of that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. As you all may appreciate, contracting, we're a bit of a black hole at times. A lot of information coming in, not a lot of information coming out. That's for good reason. There's actually law based on that, Procurement Integrity Act, that kind of limits what we can do once we begin acquisition. From the last Tinker and Primes, we have established kind of that left of Bang of where we can engage with the industry, so our virtual industry day. And that's not to be confused with the industry day during the acquisition where we answer specific questions about a specific contract. This is before, to the left of all of that. So it's more of an effort to demystify the contracting process. Tinker had, I think, their first one back in March. Hill followed suit soon afterwards. Robbins was ahead of the game. They were already doing them and have a more mature process, but as all good Air Force people do, we steal from each other to make ourselves better. So that first one, what we ended up doing was really kind of what Ronnie was talking about was, hey, who is contracting? How are we divided up? Who are we aligned with? Who are we supporting? To just kind of give you that insight. SASPO was also a part of that briefing, as was the Small Business Office, and it's kind of just give you the idea of, okay, how do we identify and vet potential contractors and how they support the acquisition process. We have another one coming up. We'll be dealing with the 448 supply chain management wing, so Mr. Gray will get to speak at that, so you get to hear directly from him on what is important for supply chain. A couple of good things that came out of that first one, and we're still collecting some data, we're still coming up with a course of action that we want to attack, but the first thing that we did was we established a workflow, so an email. So vendors could email a contracting officer to the workflow. We'll get it to the right contracting officer, but you'll get a response from the contracting officer to your question. And again, I'll caveat that with, we're not going to answer specific questions on specific requirements. It's just kind of.
So if I email in, tell me exactly what I need to do to get.
That's probably
a
not
little
gonna
too
get you-
far.
Yeah, probably not
okay.
get you the response you're
Gotcha.
looking for. But we can help. If we can answer it, we'll get you to the right people, whether that's SASPO or Mr. Hobbs' Small Business Office. So that was the first thing we did. We're also working on a newsletter that if you get on our distribution list, we will get that out to you, and that will cover policy changes of federal acquisition regulation if something comes up with that. Cyber is a big thing right now, so that's coming and the impacts of that. Our future engagements, so forums like this where we're going to start trying to engage more, again, to that left side of that proposal timeframe to help answer any of those questions. It also had a Q&A section to that, and so we'll add all of that into that newsletter. Where I hope this goes in the future is, one, to continue to demystify the process. Everyone should understand how this works. I mean, I get it. It's written down in a very easy to read federal acquisition regulation. It's about that thick if you print the whole thing out, and it gets bigger every year. We don't take away regulations. We just add to them. But give you a better understanding of that. And what I really hope happens is we can get this dialogue going of what are the limiting factors that we in contracting put on you that's really impacting you. And some things we're just not going to be able to fix because it is law, but there might be something that our offices are doing that we think is smart that is just crushing you. And I think the same vice versa, right? We'd like to tell you some of the things the industry does that makes it more difficult for us. So I think through that dialogue and those forums, I think that'll really get us there.
Thank you. If SAR is a three-letter word, CMMC might be the four. Connie, if I could you, with CMMC requirements fast approaching, what government efforts are available to you or to other industry partners to kind of help get through the certification process and be compliant with the terms under CMMC?
So if you want, I'll talk that, and you can talk what it's done for you.
I already have
Are you going to take that one first or second?
It's okay. You want me to take that first? Okay, so for the CMMC certifications, I mean, we're all very aware of that, and that regulation is coming very quickly, and we don't see any more waivers or delays or anything like that. The thing that we want to do is try to demystify that. If you're a construction contractor with 3 employees, you're not going to be expected to have the same requirements that a Lockheed Martin doing classified contracts is going to be expected. There's multiple levels to that. And the government realizes that, and they're investing significant resources to try to help you do that. At the DoD level, they have something called Project Spectrum that you can go on, you can Google Project Spectrum DoD, and there's tons of resources to try to help you get CMMC compliant. At the Air Force level, that I think is probably a little bit more helpful to some of our Air Force vendors, is something called Blue Cyber. And with that, you get directly connected to one of our cyber professionals. They have webinars, they have specific requirements for the CMMC certifications and what you need to do. They can talk to you about the third-party assessors and that process. So I would really recommend, if you have not got cyber compliant and you're kind of waiting to see if the regulation's really going to come into effect, I would recommend at least going ahead and doing like the Cyber 101, cyber hygiene, to get the level 1 compliant. Because it's probably a lot of stuff you're already doing today. It's only about 10 to 12 items that you have to complete to show Cyber 1 compliance, and you may already have that. So I would at least start down that path, because when that regulation comes into effect, PK is not going to be able to award a contract to you unless you have a certain level of certification based on your contract. So I would definitely try to get aware of that and try to see where you fit within that system. Thank you.
Yeah, also kind of to add on to that, if you work with a prime and you have ExoStar, which is their portal, I know they offer a lot of free help on CMMC as well.
All right, thank you. Now, this one's a little long, so I'm going to read here. I think Colonel Lambert and Mr. Hobbs and Connie all have a piece of this one. Knowing who to contact and how to do business with the government is a major impediment, quite a bit of a barrier sometimes. What resources are available to overcome that barrier? And then further, how should a small business engage with the SPO requirements officers or contracting to see and understand other contract opportunities within the DoD.
You want to talk how you engage?
How I engage?
Yeah.
Well, my methodology for engaging with the government, it's all about, for me, building relationships. Not only with the government and with the Air Force and any agency, but also with my suppliers, my customers, to enable for a real collaborative environment, because things will get challenging. And so you need to be able to collaborate with your customers and with your suppliers. So it takes time to build that relationship, to learn about each other. It helps mitigate your risk. So when I'm being asked to perhaps bid on a project, I know who I'm dealing with. I know what my risks are. So we put a lot of effort at WB into building those relationships throughout the organization with our customers and potential customers and our suppliers.
So I'll kind of add on to that. Before I came into this job, I was in contracting. I've been a contracting officer for several years, and I really thought the small business office just processed 2579s. They didn't do that much. Until I became a small business director, I realized that's not the case. However, one of the big things that really surprised me is the ecosystem that exists out here to help small businesses. I was completely ignorant of that. But I've really been amazed to see whether it be the SBA to help you get funding and understand how to do Business 101. You have the Minority Business Development Centers to help you with opportunities. Then for DoD, you have the Apex Accelerators. And then at every single Air Force base or Army base or Navy base, there's small business offices that are dedicated to helping you. So I think the big thing for me is if you're a small business out there and you're frustrated with the process, trying to understand the system first will allow you to be much more successful. So the biggest thing I can recommend is to sit down with the Apex Accelerator and say, please explain to me how the DoD or Air Force contracting works. You can understand that first. It will make all these engagements a lot less frustrating. It'll allow you to focus your efforts. Another thing, when you're coming to the government, I really recommend trying to do research on that organization, whether it be AFSC or Supply Chain Management Wing. I know the information is not always readily available, but try to do some research to figure out what challenges they are facing, whether it be supply chain, whether it be plating, chemical cleaning, whatever it is. If you understand those challenges, it allows you to pitch your product in a better light. And I think the quicker you can show that value proposition to that requirement owner, that engineer, because you got to think, they might be getting 10 pitches from a plating contractor, or 10 pitches from an engineer. But if you can say, hey, I can save you 30% in cost and increase your process by 20%, it's really hard to ignore, whether it be an email or a capability brief. It at least gets their attention. So I just really recommend trying to put it in a value proposition when you're engaging with the government as well. Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to that, so again, contracting, black hole, we don't do a lot during the solicitation phase, but all of that to the left, when you see stuff come out on SAM.gov, whether it's requests for information, sources, sought synopses, and all those types of things, please respond if you're interested. That helps our mission partners kind of build their market research and know that, hey, there are these guys out here that can do this type of work. So just want to hammer that, because sometimes finding suppliers is hard, and we know they're out there. Second part of that, Ronnie was kind of talking about capabilities brief. Contracting guys were kind of a cautious bunch, so we're really trying to break out of that and say, no, it's okay for a potential source to go and give a capabilities briefing to our mission partners. So they may not understand what is out there. So just kind of build that knowledge and build what is going on in the industry. That's an invaluable part of that. So I would just, again, RFIs please, and source sought, respond, and do your homework and find out who is doing what and where you can align with and hopefully be a partner in the future. And we do ask for my govies in the room if you do that with a contractor, invite a contracting officer along with you, because we are cautious. I would say if you are engaging with those mission partners and you're kind of helping them understand what you do and kind of helping identify our requirements, don't fall into the trap of helping us define our requirements. Because what could end up happening is if we got through it and we end up getting a protest because we made it too restrictive because it's based off of your capabilities, we end up having to cancel that and start all over. And you've already heard me talk about my acquisition lead time issues. The other part of that is if we catch it beforehand, you'd be excluded as a potential source, so you wouldn't be able to propose in that contract because you've already been so involved in the development.
So thank you. One more question before, I've got two. I've got about 13 minutes left. I do want to reserve some time for questions from the floor. But kind of impromptu, but where do we need to go from here? I'm interested in your thoughts on what's next for breaking barriers, and I'm putting these guys on the spot a little bit, but we've talked about a lot of things that we've done in the previous year. Based on our interactions this week or the development of the work that's been done, what's the next frontier?
So I'll be glad to take that. So I think the biggest thing for us is we always talk about keep up, catch up, leap ahead. If we really want to do that, we can't follow the normal acquisition paradigm of what we're doing of, okay, what are you going to do? Let's do an RFI. Let's do market research for 4 months. Let's do this big, cumbersome source selection. I think we got to do better of trying to internally identify what it is we need, define that requirement, and go find that resource. Go find that capability, whatever that is, and use the avenues. And I'm a big competition guy. But, very good answer. But there are a lot of avenues out there, whether it be 8A contractors, service-disabled veteran set-asides, women-owned small business set-asides, that you can quickly and much more efficiently go after work. So I think that's something that we got to change, and that's really on me too. I got to do a better job of educating the internal workforce on those programs. So I think that would be one of the biggest things for me is changing the way we think of not thinking it has to be a 18-month process. So.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the audience unless there's another comment up here. I think so. Why don't we take a question from the audience? That guy's really fast.
I know.
So I'm Lori from GSA, and one of the things that I do is I talk with a lot of vendors, and one of the things that I hear often is if you see it on SAM, you don't bother. It's already, contracting's already decided who they're going to award to. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Anyone?
So I will speak for a second, and Colonel Lambert, go ahead.
No.
So
I defer.
it's frustrating to me because I've heard the same thing from vendors. They say, if I wait for SAM, I only have a 3 or 4% business capture rate. And as a contracting officer, that frustrated me because that's really what we rely upon for getting our acquisitions out. We rely on RFIs and responses to those RFIs, then we put the acquisition out on SAM. So I guess my question back to everyone in the audience is, why is that? Like, why do you feel like that is the case? Do you feel like those opportunities are not coming out? Because we put almost every opportunity on SAM. So I don't know if it's a search feature or you're not looking at those specific efforts. So I think that's something that we definitely need to look at as a team to say, if you're truly not capturing business from SAM, which is the government point of entry, then where are we going wrong? I know that it probably didn't answer your question, but I definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess I understand your question. I'm just a little surprised to hear that as well because we're mandated to use SAM. We have to have other public ways to do that, but that is our 95% solution for solicitation is to put it out on SAM. So I don't know if what you're getting at is maybe what Ms. Hobbs is saying, maybe they don't find it. Oh.
Yeah.
Debunked.
Sorry. Yes, if you could speak to it, because I don't believe that it's true, but I hear it often.
Yeah.
And so I just want contractors here to know that if you see it on SAM, don't give up. Bid on it, go for it.
Bid on it, please.
Please.
I'm the no bid guy in the room. Please bid on stuff. Give us an opportunity to evaluate your capability and your potential to help us solve our problems. So I'm sorry, I cannot resist.
Oh, I know you couldn't, sir. That's good. Yes, debunked. Maybe it is a search function feature. You look by our DODAC codes, it's the easiest thing. It's FA81, FA85, and FA82 for the 3 locations. That might help narrow down that search for you a little bit. But that is our method for putting it out there. No, it's not awarded already if it's sitting out there. It'll show you the closing date and everything else, and that'll start our whole process of evaluations and everything else.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Colonel. Howdy. My name is Claire McGarry, and I own a company in Fort Worth, Texas that does electrical wiring. We get a lot of business off SAM, so I don't. I'm kind of agreeing with y'all. I don't know what's going on, but my question is about the industry day. You said y'all just had the industry day recently for Tinker. Is there somewhere where we can learn more about the virtual industry day for each of the 3 facilities? Can you direct us to that?
Is it on your?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
before we do those industry days, we collaborate with each other, and we typically post it on the Small Business Office website, so you'll see that's coming available. And Tinker, Robbins, and Hill for the contractor industry engagement. I think Robbins does it monthly. Tinker's doing it quarterly, and I believe Hill's doing it quarterly as well. But again, Robbins has been doing it longer, so they got a little bit more of a mature process. Another cool thing about Robbins' Industry Day is they have a forecast in addition to just an Industry Day. It's really awesome because it shows you what they have, like up to 20 to 25 requirements that are real requirements that are coming. And that's kind of the goal that I think we're trying to get to with the other 2 locations, is trying to tell you what's coming down the pike in a meaningful way.
Yeah, and also when we publish that newsletter that I was talking about earlier, it'll have those upcoming engagements to include those industry days.
All right, perfect. One up front.
Yes, sir.
Hi,
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Bob Merwin from Bauer. We're a small business test equipment provider.
Okay.
And to go back to the GSA question about SAM reception,
You better use the mic for everyone else. We can hear
if
you.
things are on,
There we go.
Yeah.
feel like
It's
lost. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working.
You know, for a standard product, that kind of thing, if you find it on SAM, great. You can get a lowest bid in there. But for products that are highly engineered,
Yeah.
that require a lot of effort to come up with a detailed proposal, technical proposal, price proposal, in a finite amount of time, excuse me, that's allowed for response, including a Q&A process that goes through contracting. If you don't know the end users yet before it gets on SAM, and you haven't gone in, talked to the users, learned about the requirement, you're behind the power curve if SAM is the first place you've seen it. And you can't get in because now you're insulated from that user from contracting. So it's a real barrier, and I mean, it really is. It puts you at a disadvantage if you have not heard about this requirement or discussed it with the end user before it's listed on SAM. Or it's listed on SAM.
So I agree with you, especially on like the highly engineered stuff. I think the first thing you got to look at, and this is where I hope that what we provide you will be helpful. For a lot of stuff like that, we'll have like an IDIQ. We'll have a 5-year or 10-year IDIQ for resolving those types of problems. And I think the key is to understand if that base or that organization you're working with has an IDIQ to resolve engineering challenges like that, and how you can get on it. Because I agree, a lot of those types of things, you typically don't even see them until they do an award notice or a fair opportunity request because it's on an IDIQ. I don't see a lot of one-off of those types of really highly technical engineering requirements. So again, I think the key is to know your customer, know the industry, and come to the small business office, and we can help you understand how we acquire those types of things. We can try to determine if we have a multiple award IDIQ, how we're doing that, so you can understand how you can participate in that.
All right, so we're going to do one question off of the app.
Thanks, Emily.
So in what ways has your unit or organization, how are they balancing the burning platform of accelerating change while ensuring security does not get sacrificed, i.e. prohibitive sources of supply?
So we're putting a lot of pressure on these guys to move quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me get a
Stop
piece
me.
of that one, if that's all right. I'm getting out of moderator role here, and but the idea of moving faster and being very critical on ourselves as a government entity, whether it's contracting, small business, or supply chain, but how do we accelerate, not insert risk, but speed up these processes so that we're able to get to the capability, bring on the items that we need to support our depots or our flight lines or our software agencies, whatever it is. So it's not really, I mean, it's a little bit unfair to say, okay, contracting, what is it? Or okay, small business, it's all of us. And I've got a big piece of that in my organization, and we're trying to do that really as an entire center and based on our chief's direction and guidance as an Air Force as well. So we've got a piece of that as well, and I think everybody does. Everybody in the Air Force does. That's why our chief challenged us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just this morning I was talking with the AFMC Small Business Director and the SAF Small Business Chief of Staff. And even a small business office, we're trying to apply that accelerate, change, or lose mindset as well. We're trying to say, okay, a small business office is the same at Tinker as it is at Altus, as it is in the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Marines. Why can't we develop one platform that manages a small business program across the entire DoD? It shouldn't be different. That would, think about the ease of communication for industry if you knew how to engage at any location across the government at the small business office from the same platform. So those are the types of things that I feel like we have to think about to really revolutionize how we communicate, not for you to have to figure out how to work with Tinker, how to work with Hill, AFSC, Army, Navy. Like, that's a very confusing and frustrating thing. And I think a lot of times we lose great contractors who, and just based on my conversations here, hey, I really like working with the Space Force. They're quick, they're fast, but I haven't had a lot of success over here. I mean, that's a lost opportunity, especially if they're a really good contractor willing to support us. So I think those are the types of ways we can revolutionize what we're doing.
You know, from a contracting perspective, we've already implemented other transaction authorities, those other non-FAR-based approaches to government acquisition, whether it's small business innovation research projects or any of those items. As far as the security question, we have plenty of laws and rules that we have to follow. I really hesitate to go down that route, but I mean, things do sneak in sometimes, and we work very hard to identify those, not necessarily in the contracting shop, but downrange with our contracting officer representatives or our end users. Those will be identified if a non-conforming part or equipment was placed in. So it's a lot. So I don't know where else to go with that.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to say no more questions from the crowd. I think we're good. Certainly appreciate everybody's feedback and time. Ms. Bertolucci, Mr. Hobbs, Colonel Lambert, thank you very much. Can I get a round of applause for our panel here? And please catch us on the break with other questions or things that you'd like to pick at. We're happy to talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic information. At this time, we're going to take a short comfort break. Be back at 3:20. You don't want to miss this next session. See you at 3:20.
To make safe flight and power generation more economical. Ultimately, we view innovation as a process of creating options and defying the status quo. Our deep engineering and material science expertise enables us to provide a full breadth of proprietary, cost-advantaged parts, repairs, and solutions for engine components. As the only independent